What's going on, guys? It's the Draft Nerd, and we didn't quite get to see our first full game of the new season because of the weather, but we did get to see some actual football for the first time in about 7 months. And it was the Houston Texans taking on the Chicago Bears in the Hall of Fame game. And I'm here to give you my views, thoughts, and opinions on it, so without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, I think the biggest thing that's on most people's minds after this game is the new kickoff rule. And that was the thing I was most excited to see, and for the most part, it looked like it's going to be a good idea. Now, I'm pretty sure they made like a little pact at the beginning of the game to not kick touchbacks and like actually kick it into the field of play and have the players see how this is gonna go. And you know, once we get into the regular season, I'd be surprised if we don't just see the same amount of touchbacks, because for those of you that don't know, if you do kick a touchback, instead of bringing the ball out to the 25, they bring it out to the 30. And I just don't think that's a big enough penalty for kicking touchbacks. I don't think special teams coordinators are going to want to risk a return, because although we didn't see any big returns in this game, you can see the potential of having a lot of big kickoff returns just because of how it's formatted. So I struggle to think that special teams coordinators are going to want to risk that. So it's a really cool idea. I hope it works out. The other thing I want to talk about with the new kickoff rule is there was a few times, either 2 or 3 times, where either the receiving team or the kicking team moved early and there was a flag thrown. And I'm a little bit concerned on how the NFL is going to monitor that, because it's kind of similar to baseball where, you know, when you're tagging up on third base, you got to watch until they catch the ball before you can move. And it's similar to that, and I just don't know how they're going to go about that, because say it's, you know, this happens in the Super Bowl and one of the players moves a split second too early. How lenient are they going to be on whether they're going to call it or not? Because that could be a big swing in a big time game. So this is all interesting to find out. It's all new to everybody, but for the most part, I think I'm a pretty big fan of it. If you want even more draft content and my full 2025 draft guide, my Patreon is the perfect thing for you. You'll get access to all of my player rankings, which are updated daily, plus you'll get to see my full summer eval on players, advanced stats on players, and my draft grades on them as well. Not to mention weekly mock drafts and mock draft reactions. It's the best way to support me and the channel, not to mention it's only $5. Again, only $5. You can't even get a Big Mac for that price anymore. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description or the pinned link in the comments and join the family over there on Patreon. Now, back to the video. But now getting into some of the actual action and some of the players that stood out. Again, you know, there was absolutely 0 starters playing this game. It was all backups. But even with that, we had a few rookies that got their first NFL action. We got some really good backups, seeing how they've progressed. So I'm just going to, you know, go through some of my key players and players that kind of stood out during this game. And the first player I'm going to talk about is Xavier Hutchinson. He was a rookie last season out of, I believe, Iowa State. And, you know, he had a up and down rookie season, I'd say. You know, he was nowhere near a starter with guys like Tank Dell, Nico Collins, John Mechie, Noah Brown. There are a lot of players ahead of him, but he still shined a little bit in his rookie season. And he kind of showed that he's probably one of the best players on the field last night. I mean, he was destroying the Bears on, you know, shallow crosses, deep crosses. Like, it seemed like he was open all the time. So, you know, it's going to be a stacked receiver room for Aiden Hutchinson to, you know, create any type of playing time. It's really going to be between him, John Mechie, Noah Brown on who's going to be that 4th receiver, because the Texans' top 3 in Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Stephon Diggs, like, there's just no hope for guys to crack that top 3. But you know, that 4th receiver in that, you know, wide receiver core is up for grabs. And I wouldn't be surprised if Xavier Hutchinson doesn't, you know, pull away and become that wide receiver 4, because he looked very, very good last night. And then another guy on the Texans, the rookie Cade Stover, the tight end out of Ohio State. He made a lot of, you know, really good plays that aren't going to show up in the box score. I know he made a catch early on for, I believe it was a first down. He moved the chains, but he also just made some really key blocks. He's going to do all that dirty, hard-nosed things that, you know, a lot of tight ends aren't going to do. And that's the reason I really like Cade Stover coming out of Ohio State. Is just he's going to do the things that no one else wants to do. So he looked really good as well. I don't believe Kamari Lassiter played just because he's technically a starter for the Texans. I was kind of hoping to see him play a little bit, but I didn't end up seeing him out there. Kalen Bullock, the, I believe, like 4th round rookie I believe out of USC. He had a really good game as well. He led the team in total tackles with 5. He had 3 solo tackles, and he had one really good forced fumble where he just came down, and I believe the receiver was the tight end, Tommy Sweeney. He just hit him perfectly, knocked the ball loose. Unfortunately, didn't get the fumble recovery, but it was just a really good play, and he really stood out to me. He looked like the rangy safety the Texans were hoping they were getting. And he also, which was one of his biggest knocks, he looked like he was able to make some tackles. So, I mean, Kalen Bullock's looking really solid. I wouldn't be surprised if he sees a good amount of playing time in the regular season as well. Any last notes for the Texans? I see Cam Akers still looked like he had some juice even after his second Achilles tear. Now, do I think he's going to make the roster? I think he will. There's guys like Dameon Pierce and Joe Mixon ahead of him, but I think Cam Akers is probably going to make that RB3 spot. It's between him. I mean, J.J. Taylor, the running back, got the most carries today with 6, but Cam Akers wasn't far behind with 5, and he looked a good amount better than J.J. Taylor as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cam Akers makes the roster. And then, Davis Mills looked like one of the better backups in the league. We kind of knew that already. Case Keenum got a few snaps as well, threw a touchdown, and then Tim Boyle. That's when things started going downhill for the Texans. But overall, the Texans look pretty good. The guys that are, no disrespect to the whole team, but the guys that were important during this game looked good. No one really looked, out of place. So overall, I'd say that's a pretty good win for the Texans. Now moving over to the Bears, who technically won this game, even though we didn't play the fourth quarter. I want to start off with, not the biggest name, but Brett Rippon looked incredible today. Now, granted, he's playing against second, third, fourth string players, but he was ripping the ball all over the field. I mean, he went 11 for 15, and I know at least 3 of those 4 incompletions were dropped passes. They were good balls, just dropped. So, I mean, Brett Rippon looked amazing last night. So, I mean, it's going to be between him and Tyson Bagent on who's going to be that second string player, and it's probably going to be Tyson Bagent unless Brett Rippon has an amazing preseason, just because, I mean, Tyson Bagent came out first series and only played 1 series, so that's usually a telltale that they're the backup because they don't want to, get them injured. So either way, I think Brett Rippon is going to make a roster, whether that's with the Bears or not, because he looked fantastic tonight. Khalil Herbert looked really good as well. He's one of those guys that probably shouldn't be out here. He's a little too talented to be playing against third and fourth string players. Same with Roschon Johnson. I'm a really big fan of him. I was, huge on him coming out of Texas. And he's just that prototypical backup. I mean, he did it in college where he backed up Bijan Robinson. And he's just going to be a really good backup in this league. And I'm a big fan of him. He had, what did he have? He had 24 yards. So, again, no one really, lit up the stat sheet at all this game. I mean, they only had 3 quarters, and there was a lot of people getting the ball. But, I mean, Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson both looked really good. And they also picked up Demetric Felton, and I didn't even know this. I guess this had been a recent pickup, but he had 3 carries for 14 yards. I was a big fan of Demetric Felton over in Cleveland, so if he doesn't make this roster, I hope he makes one in general, just because he's a really fun player. Moving on, we had, no real key standouts besides Colin Johnson from the Bears receiving core. I mean, he was a former Giant, and I was a big fan of him because the Giants are my favorite team, but, I mean, he's just a big, I believe he's like 6'5", 6'6", wide receiver, and he was going up and just snagging balls. He had 2 touchdowns on 3 receptions for 56 yards, and he also had a really nice catch that was ruled an incompletion because, once he hit the ground, it kind of, lodged out of there. But he showed the necessary ball skills to be a really, really good red zone target, and I don't think he's going to crack the starting rotation or nothing like that, but he's definitely going to make this team, and he's definitely going to be a key contributor if one of the, starting receivers go down, the big 3 in Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze. Some of the defensive players that stood out for Chicago, I mean, there weren't really many. I mean, Zach Pickens coming into a second year had 2 tackles. Yeah, and that's about it. I was hoping to see Kieran Amagaji play, the Bears offensive lineman, but he didn't play. I believe he's injured. So, both of these teams, didn't have the, the biggest draft class, and that's usually the most fun thing to see is, how the the rookies come in and play. Obviously, Caleb Williams isn't going to play. Obviously, Roma Dunze isn't going to play. And then Kieran Amagaji was injured. Kamari Lassiter didn't play. So a lot of the rookies didn't play. But, Kalen Bullock had a really good game. Same with Cade Stover. Xavier Hutchison, the second-year player, had a really good game. Overall, both teams have really good games. They came out relatively unscathed, injury-wise, which is always good to see. But, it was just really fun to see football for the first time and, for the better part of a year. So, let me know what you guys think of the game. Let me know if you guys like the new kickoff rule and how it went for you guys. But with that being said, I'm the Draft Nerd, and thanks for watching.